All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive, sometimes kind of uncomfortable topic: financial accountability. We're going to span the entire spectrum here, starting all the way down at the micro level with our own personal wealth habits, and then zooming right out to the macro level to look at the UK government's sweeping new welfare debt recovery laws. So, whether it's managing your own paycheck or trying to understand the strict new realities of owing money to the state, accountability is really the thread that ties this whole thing together. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with avoiding bad financial habits, then look at the DWP debt crackdown, closing the benefits loophole, deductions and driving bans, exemptions and safeguards, and finally, the exact steps to arrange repayment before October 2026. Section 1. Avoiding bad financial habits at the micro level of wealth building. Okay, so before we get into the heavy government policy stuff, we really have to look at the foundation of personal accountability. Because, wealth building and financial stability, they begin at home. They begin with the everyday choices that either build us up or hold us back. Finance creator Mark Tilbury lays out 7 habits you absolutely must avoid if you want to build wealth. They range from working just for money and buying a lifestyle you frankly can't afford to being ego-driven or trying to do literally everything yourself. Life is all about making hard choices, and the more of these little traps you can avoid early on, well, the better off your bank account's going to be. Now, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is about passing the blame and staying static. If you're constantly passing the buck for your financial situation onto other people, or you just refuse to address your debts, staying static, you are actively destroying your financial future. Taking personal accountability is step 1. And honestly, that perfectly sets the stage for our next topic: what actually happens when people try to stay static when it comes to money they owe the government. Let's look at Section 2, the DWP debt crackdown and the macro level of financial consequences. £14.6 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. To really understand the stark reality of owing the Department for Work and Pensions right now, you have to look at the sheer scale of their new crackdown. The UK government has committed to a massive savings target of £14.6 billion over the next 5 years, pulling directly from fraud, error, and debt activity. And to hit that target, the DWP is investing heavily. They're deploying up to 3,000 additional staff and drastically leveling up their data, analytics, and investigative capabilities. Now, it's super important to separate everyday folks who are just struggling with debt from outright organized criminality. The system is aggressively pursuing high-profile extreme fraud cases to hit that multi-billion-pound target. Take Operation Mellow, for instance, which targeted a gang hijacking IDs for £3 million in false universal credit and PIP claims. Or you have Bethany Elwood, who committed £78,000 of universal credit fraud by lying about being single for over 4 years while actually living with her boyfriend. And then, wow, there's Catherine Wieland, sentenced for £23,000 of PIP fraud, who was literally caught ziplining in Mexico, despite claiming severe mobility issues. I mean, these are the extreme fraudsters the system is built to catch. Section 3. Closing the benefits loophole through the PAYFAR Act 2025. So here is where it becomes a real game changer. This new legislation fundamentally shifts debt recovery for everyday people who simply owe money but, for whatever reason, have stopped paying. Under the old system, the DWP had very few options to pursue people who were no longer claiming benefits or who had moved on into standard PAY employment. This basically meant former claimants who could absolutely afford to repay their debts were sometimes just choosing not to. Well, that loophole is now firmly closed. Under the new system, driven by the Public Authorities Fraud, Error, and Recovery Act, or the PAYFAR Act, the DWP can now go directly to a person's bank to claw back the cash owed, and they don't even need a court order to do it. To look at this impartially, this quote from the Work and Pensions Minister for Transformation, Andrew Western, really underscores the government's strict policy stance here. They're firmly positioning this as a necessary protection of public funds, specifically targeting those who have the means to pay but deliberately won't. Moving to Section 4, deductions, driving bans, and the strict new penalties for debt dodgers. Okay, before we get to the most severe penalties, there's a proactive new tracking method you need to know about. Alongside those direct bank deductions, the government is introducing something called the Eligibility Verification Measure. Basically, this allows the DWP to require limited data from banks and financial institutions to help spot incorrect benefit payments. The whole goal is to make sure claimants get paid accurately from the get-go and to catch and resolve errors much, much sooner. And then there is the ultimate penalty threshold, £1,000. In the most serious cases, the DWP can now actually ask a court to strip persistent dodgers of their driving license. But, and this is key, courts can only impose this ban if the debt is at least £1,000. It's a highly severe measure, and it's designed specifically for those who deliberately and repeatedly ignore their financial responsibilities, even when they definitely have the cash to pay. Section 5. Exemptions and essential safeguards for essential drivers. Now, recognizing just how devastating a driving ban can be to someone's livelihood, the government has built in some very specific legal protections, all governed by strict codes of practice. They're not just handing out bans left and right. No one can be disqualified if they have a genuine essential need for their license. So this includes clear exemptions for work that actively relies on driving, like, say, if you're a courier. It also includes exemptions for people who have essential caring responsibilities. And importantly, even if a driving ban is issued, it's initially suspended, just as long as the debtor sticks to their agreed-upon repayment terms. Finally, Section 6, steps to arrange repayment and the action plan before October 2026. Because this enforcement is happening as a gradual rollout, there is a very clear window of opportunity to take action right now. Step 1. Debtors will begin receiving updated warning letters starting from June 24, 2026. Step 2. Anyone who is no longer receiving benefits but gets this letter absolutely must act and contact the DWP within a 4-month window. Step 3. Sort out an affordable repayment plan before the full October 2026 enforcement rollout actually begins. Look, taking these steps means the really harsh powers, like those driving bans or having money pulled directly from your bank, can be avoided entirely. It's super important to note here that the government is essentially saying their door is open. The DWP wants to work with individuals to find an affordable way to repay what's owed. And if it helps, their staff are fully equipped to point struggling individuals toward free, professional debt advice and support services. You really don't have to navigate this whole thing alone, but you do have to take that accountability and reach out. So to wrap up this explainer, we kind of have to step back and look at the big picture. We've gone from the personal responsibility of not passing the blame all the way to a government that is now actively reaching into bank accounts and threatening driving licenses to enforce that accountability. So I'll leave you with this thought. How does the evolution of this direct data access and these really aggressive new recovery tools permanently reshape the balance between government oversight and our own personal financial privacy? It is a massive, massive shift in how the state handles debt. And honestly, it's something every single one of us needs to be paying very close attention to.